It never starts with a scream. It starts with silence. A kind that settles deep, like fog in the bones. A little girl, barefoot in the rain. A plate of food left at a stranger's door. A soldier standing in a hallway that smells of someone else's life. You don't remember choosing these videos. You remember seeing one at 2:36 a.m. when sleep and sorrow start to blur. The title whispered like a memory you never had. A daughter left food at a door. What happened next will haunt you. You clicked. And something clicked back. You tell yourself it's fiction. You tell yourself it's harmless. But the stories don't end. They just dissolve into the next one and the next. You don't realize it, but your breathing syncs with the narrator. Your heartbeat shifts to match the rhythm of grief. These aren't stories. They're precision-engineered rituals. Each script follows a formula buried so deep you'll never see it unless you stop blinking. A girl cries in silence. A boy hides a note. A man watches from a distance. And always, just before it ends, someone appears. The benefactor. A witness. A savior. But never in time. Never quite soon enough. That's how the loop stays open. The videos arrive during hypnagogic hours, between 1 and 3 a.m. That's not random. That's when the mind is most pliable, when dreams haven't formed yet and memory starts to fray at the edges. Psychologists call it the suggestion window. Algorithms call it peak engagement. Whatever it is, it works. One click becomes 6. One episode becomes a marathon of emotional attrition. And what do all the titles have in common? Hunger, cold, abandonment, redemption. She asked for milk, then whispered something that made me cry. A soldier found a note in his son's ear. He collapsed after hearing it. These aren't headlines. They're hooks wrapped in grief, calibrated to bypass logic and stab directly into the amygdala. Linguistic analysis confirms it. Most scripts share an identical cadence. 3-sentence emotional escalations. Repetitive naming conventions. Even the musical score is algorithmically modulated. Slow piano in minor key, rainfall, a door creaking at just the right moment. Not once. Every time. Over and over. The viewer thinks they're finding comfort. They're finding programming. One researcher compared touching moments' narrative structure to classic trauma reinforcement models. Used in therapy, yes, but also in psychological operations. The difference? Therapy wants you to remember. This wants you to relive. And the viewers feel it. They say it out loud, but no one listens. I woke up crying and I don't know why. I watched 10 in a row and now I feel like someone's watching me. I don't even like these videos. Why can't I stop? The comment sections echo with shared confusion. But you'll never find those threads now. Most are deleted, scrubbed, as if the channel is tidying up after itself. Keeping the loop clean. Keeping the viewer open. Because these stories aren't meant to end. They're meant to stay with you. And maybe they already have. Maybe you're not watching the story. Maybe it's watching you. There's a kind of town that only exists when no one's looking. The kind you remember from a dream you never had, or maybe from a place your childhood tried to forget. Haven Rock. Easton Pines. Whisper Ridge. Their names feel soft, nostalgic, places where tragedy feels almost beautiful. But when researchers tried to map them, they didn't find coordinates. They found repetition. Overlapping locations with identical shadows. Diners with flickering lights that never change. Third-floor attic rooms with peeling wallpaper and always a locked door. It was supposed to be fiction. But fiction doesn't draw grids across state lines. Fiction doesn't echo back through military archives. When 25 Touching Moments episodes were dissected frame by frame, a pattern emerged. These towns, though renamed, slightly altered, fell along a precise line across rural Pennsylvania. The loop. A circuit. At the center of it all, a town that doesn't exist on any official record, but has been whispered across 6 different stories, 3 forums, and 1 declassified file. FOIA file #88-19B. Buried in jargon, sealed under layers of bureaucratic fog, it describes narrative suggestion trials used in emotional regulation therapy on trauma patients. It mentions 3 zones: Whisper, Haven, and Echo. The same names. The same towns. The same loop. A redacted report from 2011, quietly leaked but never verified, references what it calls containment experiments, where individuals are exposed to audio-narrated memories while sleep-deprived. The result? Emotional numbing, identity softening, increased compliance. You were supposed to forget them, but your heart remembers what your brain won't admit. You've been to Whisper Ridge. Not physically, but in the way certain places burrow inside you and wait. And then there's Claire Sanders. 6 stories. 6 lives. Same name. Sometimes she's a waitress. Sometimes a missing daughter. Once, a girl who only speaks in whispers at the back of a classroom. But Claire Sanders is also the name on an unresolved missing persons bulletin from 2012, last seen in rural Pennsylvania. The report says, possibly relocated. Relocated where? To another role? Another loop? Or deeper into the script she was written into? These places, they don't need to exist on a map. They exist inside the stories. And once you've seen them, you can't stop seeing them. The diner at midnight. The broken swing. The cellar door that never opens. You begin to feel like you've been there before. And maybe you have. Maybe we all have. Because if these towns were never real, then why do they feel like home? You start to notice it around episode 4. Not with your eyes, your mind's too tired for that, but in your gut, where memory knots itself into instinct. Claire, Elena, Ethan, Michael, Linda, Ben. The names return, like echoes, reshaped but unforgotten. In one story, Michael is a grieving husband with hollow eyes and a rusted truck. In another, he's a retired officer watching from behind fogged diner windows. Different man. Same wounds. Same past. And Claire, always Claire, is either the lost girl, the waitress with bruises, or the daughter whispering things no child should know. They don't move forward. They just rearrange. Like ghosts trapped in a carousel, pulled from one tragedy into the next, endlessly repurposed. It's not variety. It's design. Psychologists call it the limbo loop, when the mind is exposed to recurring emotional cues disguised in new packaging. At first, it resists, then it relents, then it bonds. The trauma becomes familiar. The pain starts to feel safe. You've seen these people suffer, break, vanish. So when they come back in different stories, you don't question it. You welcome it. Familiarity breeds trust. And trust bypasses logic. The data proves it. Viewers don't stop at 1. They consume 4, 5, 7 episodes in a single sitting, long past midnight. By then, the characters feel like someone you know, someone you've failed to save. The looping becomes emotional seduction. Each episode resets the maze. And you run it willingly. Michael Whitley. The name appears across multiple stories. In one, his wife dies in a car crash. In another, she dies in childbirth. Yet the details, his truck, the way he looks at a fogged window, the quote on his mantle, never change. It's not bad writing. It's psychological reinforcement. DARPA tested this in 2007 under controlled empathy decay models. Subjects were shown the same narrative arc with shifting details. Over time, they felt less grief, more loyalty. Emotional fatigue became obedience. This isn't just storytelling. It's simulation. A loop designed not to entertain, but to soften. To replace your reactions with reflexes. To grind down your resistance until Claire's pain becomes your routine and Michael's grief feels like ritual. The names don't change because they're not supposed to. They're anchors. And once they're set in your mind, the rest doesn't matter. You don't remember the plot. You remember the feeling, the hunger, the bruises, the sound of a voice saying, "It's okay now. You're safe." But you're not. You're just still watching. Still looping. And somewhere, behind the next episode, the maze resets. He never knocks. He never speaks first. Just watching from across the street. Sitting alone at the counter. Standing in the doorway as the girl cries herself silent. He doesn't stop the pain. He waits for it to finish. Then he steps in, soft voice, quiet eyes, clothes too clean for the world around him. A stranger, always a stranger. But he feels familiar. Like the memory of someone you once hoped you'd become. Or worse, someone who once watched you. They call him the benefactor. Analysts, viewers, even the scripts themselves, though never allowed. He shows up in nearly every story. A passive male figure, middle-aged, emotionally unmoored. He's grieving or rich or both, but always alone, and always perfectly timed. He arrives when the child is shivering, when the abuse is at its worst, when the final whisper is spoken into the dark. He offers help. He pays the bill. He leaves without taking credit. It should feel noble, but something about it feels staged. In 2023, a Redditor digging through background frames noticed something strange. The same chair. The same kitchen clock. The same faded painting of a winter barn. Different episodes, different houses, different characters, but the benefactor always brings the same pieces with him. Like set dressing from a dream. A theater of compassion rehearsed over and over. And when you stack these stories side by side, the illusion begins to bleed. The houses may change, but he doesn't. He never changes. His behavioral profile isn't fiction. It matches real-world trauma management models, specifically those documented in Operation Silent Watch, a U.S. program designed to train PTSD-affected soldiers to monitor civilian unrest without direct engagement. Observe. Assess. Do not interfere unless necessary. That phrase appears in redacted field manuals leaked in 2015. The benefactor doesn't save the day. He waits until it's broken enough to fix, just enough to leave you grateful, but never whole. Psychologists believe he's more than a character. He's a mirror, a projection device engineered to carry the viewer's dormant guilt. He lets you feel righteous without risk, empathetic without obligation. He enters the frame when you most want someone to. He does what you would have done, if this wasn't fiction. But that illusion is a trap. Because over time, the benefactor trains you. He teaches you that goodness arrives from the outside. That watching is helping. That bearing witness is enough. But it isn't. And deep down, you know that. You know that if he doesn't appear, no one does. The story doesn't end until he shows up. And neither does your belief that someone else will come fix the pain. So you keep watching, hoping he appears again. And maybe he will. But ask yourself this. The first time you saw him, was he already looking at you? It always ends like this. Not with credits. Not with resolution. But with your screen dimming at 3:19 a.m. and your reflection staring back at you, eyes wide, jaw slack, the glow of 20 stories burned into your retinas. You were just watching, you told yourself. Just feeling something. But something was feeling you back. And it never blinked. One night, buried in the comments under an old video, a message surfaced. The limp is always on the left leg. It vanished in under 3 minutes. Another appeared days later. Don't watch past episode 4. That's when it starts dreaming back. These weren't trolls. These were warnings. From people who saw the loop from the inside and couldn't get out. The channel doesn't crave attention. It requires emotion. The more you give, the more it grows, shifting, tightening, mirroring your grief like a face in the fog. You thought you came for closure. But the stories were never meant to close. They were meant to reopen. Technical audits tell a stranger story. Hidden inside the subtitle tracks of select episodes are fragments of text never meant to be seen. Repeat sequence initiated. Restore empathetic anchors. Sector loop active. Metadata reveals a now-erased Amazon S3 bucket containing a sound file. seedclair_loop4_final.wave. Mirrored 18 times. Each one slightly altered, like emotional fingerprints rewritten again and again. A former studio audio technician, who refused to give a name, claimed certain episodes contained low-frequency tones around 18.98 Hz, known to neuroscientists as the fear frequency. Not loud, not audible, but felt. In the spine, in the stomach, in the breath you didn't know you were holding. And then there's that script cipher. A quiet voice on X, obsessive, precise. He spent 3 years analyzing the narrator's cadence, down to the breath pauses and vowel curves. His thread, now shadow banned, concluded the pacing was identical to Lucid Protocol, an experimental audiotherapeutic format tested by MK Canopy in 2011. Funded Buried. Forgotten. Until now. His last post read, "They found a way to bypass conscious defense. All they needed was empathy." He hasn't posted since. You kept watching. That was the deal. That was the ritual. Watch the pain. Absorb the horror. Feel the redemption. Repeat. But somewhere around episode 5, it changed. The faces began to stare longer. The addicts felt too familiar. And then, one night, you dreamed about a girl in a blue hoodie asking you why you didn't help. You'd never seen her before. Except you had. Episode 12. 3 seconds. Background blur. The truth isn't that these stories are fake. The truth is they are working exactly as intended. Emotional erosion. Psychological fatigue. Compassion repurposed into trust. Fiction that kneels at the altar of reality until it becomes sacred. You didn't just let it in. You built a home for it. And now it lives there. Quiet. Patient. Waiting. Because it knows something you've only just begun to suspect. You were never the watcher. You were the trigger.